Alright guys, it's time to do my lift. I got a 4-inch rough country lift for my 95 Wrangler. Picked it up on Amazon for about, I think it's about $4.50, thereabouts. Came packaged in this really nice box. Everything was packed in there really nice in foam. I've opened it all up for you guys. Of course, the springs for front and back, new shocks, all the hardware, new U-bolts, longer sway bar mounts, new arm for the steering, bump stops. And then I was reading online, when you do this install, it's good to replace the brake lines with longer ones. So I've gotten longer brake lines for this kit. Here's the best part. Comes with a sticker. That pretty much sold me on the whole kit. No. Anyways, so this is all the instructions that it comes with. I guess they figure it's pretty self-explanatory, so you know, let's dive into this thing and see what we have. I'm going to start with the front. In order to do that, go ahead and put jack stands underneath the frame, right up in here, so it doesn't interfere with the mounts of the old spring. I'm going to lift it up just enough to get the weight off those bolts. Should be able to do all this with the tires on. If it comes down to it, I will pull the tires off. Wind up jacking it up maybe 2 or 3 inches just to get the weight off the tires. And go from there. So before we get started, I want to take some measurements. See how much we're actually getting out of this lift. So we'll do the driver's side. Passenger side should be about the same. So I'm looking at about 30 inches in the front and 31, maybe an eighth or a quarter thereabouts, but we'll call it 31 just to make it easy. Alright guys, so the tools needed for this job: good tire wrench, 3/4 inch ratchet wrench, 9/16 ratchet wrench, 1/4 ratchet wrench, 3/4 long and 3/4 short sockets, socket wrench. This is a good breaker bar. It's I think about 18 inches long. Decent mallet of some sort, and possibly channel locks. So I am going to go ahead and take off the tires. It looks like I have better clearance to everything, so we'll get started on that. Also, I recommend good jack stand. This one's really cool because I can raise that up, and it's got a hydraulic lifter on it, so once it's under the frame, I just jack the thing up and lifts the car. You don't even have to have a good jack, but I do have a good jack in the garage, but this makes it easier to do the job. So I'm going to go ahead and jack the car up in the front and then take the tires off. For the springs, you're going to be using the 8010s for the fronts and the 8011s for the backs. Okay, 8011s have this spacer here. It's a little wedge to wedge up your rear end the right angle. So that's a little spacer. The big side will be going towards the front of the vehicle. The reason for that is to change the pinion angle so it actually matches up with the vehicle better. If you did it the opposite direction, it would actually tilt it down when you want to tilt it up. Okay, so then we're going to take 1 bump stop for the front, 2 bump stops for the front, and then 4 of these guys for the fronts, and the 2 front shocks, and then a handful of bolts, which are right here, and that is, they don't say a bag coat on it except for a half bag. So those would be for the fronts. Alright guys, it's time to install these for the 4-inch lift. These are the transmission drop mounts. The Rough Country system comes with the bolts and the mounts. So to get this plate off, you're going to need a 3/4 inch socket, and there's 3 bolts on both sides. You have one up here, one in the middle, and one in the back on both sides. So there's 6 bolts total. So we're going to go ahead and crack it loose, and then I'm going to put that jack right underneath the middle of it and see if I can lower this side down and work on what I need to work on. Alright, so we're going to start with the front shock, removing that. You're going to need 9/16 on the top and a 1/4 inch on this top little threaded piece. That's only so you can get this guy off without this guy spinning. And down below you're going to need 3/4 inch socket and a 3/4 inch ratchet. Ratchet wrench for this side because none of clearance, and then you get a socket on this side. So let's get the shocks off. Alright, so we got package 1620BAG2 and package 7593BAG. These two are for the front shocks. You have bottom mount of the front shock, and then you have the rubber bushings and top mount of the front shock. So we'll take those for the fronts, and these two shocks will be for the fronts as well. Okay, so next we're going to be removing the sway bar mounts, and we're going to be taking that bolt off down at the bottom, which is the 3/4, and then this top bolt off up here. Now you got a pin holding this top bolt on. Once you pull that, then you can use a 3/4 inch socket or ratchet wrench on this. So we'll be pulling that out, and then after that we'll be removing these 4 perch plates, bolts, those guys on both sides. Okay, so let's get those things loose. This top sway bar mount is actually pressed in. It's got a angle bolt in there pressed into the actual sway bar. So you're going to need to get a set of bearing pullers and wrap it around this side and put the pressure point here to push it out. So this is what I was talking about by setting up the bearing puller. So you know, your pressure point on the bolt there, you got the 2 hooks on the sway bar. Just keep going, eventually it's just going to pop and fly out of there. So I recommend wearing some safety glasses when you do this. Alright guys, so I got this perch off. Okay, went ahead and put my jack underneath the axle, lifted it up about 1/2 inch so all the weight's off of this spring now. Now I'm going to take the front and back bolts off the spring, install the new one, and then drop the axle back down on it. Alright, so we got the old one out. One thing to make sure is the bigger diameter goes towards the back, and the smaller diameter goes up in the front. Alright, so you're going to want to put the back one in first and then rotate to the front one. Reason being is because you can adjust those. That's not adjustable, so I would get that mounted first and then swing it around and mount that one up. Now you are going to be reusing your bolts and nuts, so save those and yeah, don't throw them away. So you're going to want to loosen up the 2 top bolts on this guy, or excuse me, 1 top bolt, so this thing can move freely. Reason for that is you want your whole suspension to be loose, so when you set it back on the ground, it all settles in where it's supposed to, and then you tighten everything up. If you leave those tight and you try to tighten everything else up, you're going to have a really stiff suspension. And not to mention, it helps to put the last part of the spring in, you know, because you have to move it in to line up to that spring. So this kit comes with 2 different sizes of U-bolts. Reason being is because you need a bigger one to go over this, and then the smaller one to go over this. So make sure you don't try to pound the smaller one onto this. Find the two bigger ones and they'll go right over this. And there's only 2 in the package. 2 for the front, that's it. Okay guys, so we're putting the U-bolts back on. Make sure this plate's here, hole pointing towards the brakes. Also remember that this U-bolt's bigger than this outside one that's only on the front. Okay, and the torque settings for those bolts down there are 90 foot-pounds. So go ahead and get your torque wrench out, set it to 90 foot-pounds. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see, yeah, 90 foot-pounds. And get them snug and then torque them down. Okay, so after I removed the shocks and the sway bar mounts, I'm going to be doing this pitman arm right here, replacing with the drop one for the 4-inch lift. So it looks like, can't tell if that's 1 1/8. That one over there was actually 3/4, so that would be easy, but this guy, I believe it's 1 1/8. So let me get a wrench on it. And so I tried 1 1/8, 1 1/4. Both were too small for this, so I'm just going to go ahead and use a 15-inch crescent, put it on there and crack it loose. Now once I crack it loose, I'm going to make a mark, okay, and then on the new one I'm going to put a mark on it as well, the same angle, and slide it back on. That's just so I have the correct alignment. Alright, so on the bottom, on this hole here, you're going to need to slide one of these guys in. Okay, easiest thing to do is get some sort of lube. This stuff is just penetrating oil. You're going to slide it in as far as you can. So if you don't put any lube in there, you're going to be fighting the rubber. So it's that easy. As I just installed the new brake lines for the front and bled the brakes in the front. So now I'm getting ready to put the shock on. I'm going to mount the bottom first, release this cable, and then allow this pin to go through the top hole. Before you release the cable, put a washer and the rubber gasket on there. This thing can go up sometimes pretty quick, not all the time, but sometimes it can, so just make sure you have it ready. Otherwise you'll have to be pushing it back down and fighting it later. So okay, got the front back on the ground. One thing I just want to remind you guys how to do: go through and tighten up all your bolts, everything, the sway bar bolts, the shocks, bottom of the shocks, the bottom of the springs, the rear of the springs. Make sure you do everything before you go on out and test drive it. So, all right.